Okay, good evening, Rabbi. Chag Sameach. Today is the first day of Hanukkah, and in order to get into the holiday spirit, we should talk about something regarding the holiday, having to do with the holiday. So, one of the interesting things that we find regarding the holiday is the whole history of the Hashmonaim. Who are the Hashmonaim? The Hashmonaim are the kings that existed in Jewish country at that time in Judea, which was the ruling class over there and the Jewish people at that time. So this kingdom, who were they? And what do they represent? And regarding the victory that they had over the Greeks, to understand this a little bit, to understand the whole concept here. But there's also one thing in particular which is also quite interesting, which is that these kings, the Hashmonaim, we call them Maccabees, all kinds of names they have for them, all kinds of names. By the way, the word Maccabee means it's an acronym. Mi kamocha be'elim Hashem. Who was like you amongst the gods, God, right? Our God, whatever. That's what Maccabee means. Today they think it means something else. They think it's a basketball game, some kind of basketball team in Israel today. They call them Maccabee, right? Maccabee. That's not exactly what it is, right? That's just the opposite, by the way, because the whole basketball thing is like Greek culture, sports, so the whole thing is the Greeks. Just the opposite of what it's supposed to be, right? Today they make everything the opposite. Everything is upside down. The whole world is upside down, right? That's the way it is. But what's really behind that? So the truth is, right, that what do we have over here? Basically, we find in the history of the Jewish people, in the Talmud, other sources, and Yosifon talks about this era of the Jewish people. So what happened was like this, right? This history of the Maccabees is that they defeated the Greeks and they made a kingdom. So their kingdom was based basically on the fact that they defeated the Greeks. In other words, they made them into like heroes. So since they became heroes, okay, let's take the kingdom and become the rulers, right? One thing follows the other. That's the way it is, right? When you save the people, they show you gratitude by electing you as the leader. That's how they became kings. But the question is basically, was the Hashmonaim, was it a legitimate kingdom? Was it illegitimate? We're talking about, today what's going on, right? Who's legitimate, not legitimate? Same thing, right? Was it a legitimate kingdom? And so I'll tell you why it's even a question. Because the Maccabees, the Hashmonaim, they were Kohanim, they were priests, they came from a priestly family. So what is the priestly family? The Kohanim, we're talking about people who are descended from Aaron HaKohen, who was a brother of Moshe Rabbeinu. So what does that mean? You have the Levites, the tribe, the Levi, right? And a portion of the Levites is Kohanim. So it's like a sub tribe. One family is the Kohanim, which comes from Aaron. So if you come from Moshe Rabbeinu, you're a Levi, even though it's the same family. If you come from Aaron, you're a Kohen, right? They're both your forefathers, and they're your uncles, whatever. But still, you come from a different category altogether. Kohen is one thing, Levi is a different thing. But the Kohanim, what's their job? Their job is to serve as priests. What does that mean to be a priest? That means to offer sacrifices, to offer the offerings. All the offerings that were done in the Beit HaMikdash were all done by the Kohanim. This was their job, And so they have a special exalted status in Am Yisrael. They're not just regular people, they're creme de la creme. The Maccabees. So don't talk about Maccabees only. We're talking about all the Kohanim. Right? The Kohanim also. The Maccabees were also Kohanim. So the question is, are you allowed to be a Kohen and also to be a king at the same time? Or is there some kind of contradiction between one and the other? So we find actually, right, that this kingdom, the Maccabees, they ruled over the Jews for over 200 years. It was quite a long kingdom, right? Not like 4 years, like 8 years. 1 term, 2 terms. We're talking about like 20, 30, or 50 terms. That's what we're talking about. Can you imagine? Can you imagine doing 50 terms? That's what they did. So it's a much bigger and much more substantial kingdom than just 4 years or 8 years. And they ruled over, as we said, 200 years. So what happened was, after they ruled 200 years, what happened with them? So their kingdom was destroyed. How was it destroyed? It came to a actually very sad ending. You know, which is what that it says in the Gemara. It says in the Talmud. That what happened was that they had a slave. You know, this kingdom. I'm sure they had many of them, but they had one particular slave, whose name was Hurdus. You know, which was Herod. That's what they call him today, right? Herod. They call him Herod the Great. I'll tell you why they call him so great. He wasn't so great, but the question is why they call him great. What's so great about him? Right? So this Herod, he was a slave in that family. So he decided to kill them off. You know, he made a plot. Conspiracy, you know? He made a conspiracy to kill off the whole family. And what happened? Once he killed off everybody, he took the rule himself. He became the king himself. He was a slave. So what does that mean he's a slave? That means that he was not Jewish, Herod. That's called Evet Kanani, right? Evet Kanani is somebody who you buy from the market. You know, he's not Jewish. You take him as a slave. But since he's a slave of a Jew, he has to be circumcised. He has to go into the mikveh. So he has to keep some of the mitzvot that the Jews keep, like the women. Basically like the women do. So he's already like quasi, converted into Judaism, but not exactly. Why? Because he's still a slave, so he doesn't have a status of a free Jew. So what happened was that Hurdus, Herod, he was like one of these slaves. He was called Evet Kanani. And what happened was that he rebelled, but the problem is that when he rebelled and he killed off all the Hashmonaim, the Maccabees, he took the kingdom himself, but he himself was not really a full-fledged Jew. He was still technically a slave. You know? So...
He's the one who had, who crucified, right?
No, I don't think so. No. Nothing to do with him. Nothing to do with him. I don't think he was alive at that time. I don't think they ever met each other. Okay. So anyway, the point is, right, that Herod, he started a dynasty, and this dynasty also went on for quite a while. What does that mean? He had children, and they took over after him also. So there were like several generations of kings that came from Herod. And then the Romans came, right, and they destroyed everything. That's what happened, right? The whole procession went like this. First the Hashmonaim, first the Maccabees, then the Herod's family, right? And then came the Romans and they destroyed the second temple. This is how it happened, right? This happened during the period of the Romans, what you're talking about. That's a little bit later. So anyway, what happened was that he killed off everybody, and he didn't leave anybody alive. Not only that, this Herod, he was a maniac, So what he did was afterwards, after he killed off all the kings, the family of the kings, he also killed off all the rabbis in his generation. Can you imagine? The big Chachamim killed off everybody. So only one of them was left alive. The rest of them got all wiped out. So he was a butcher, he was a destroyer. He destroyed everything. Left nothing. So only one rabbi got left over. His name was Shimon ben Shetach. So Shimon ben Shetach, Herod calls him in, and tells him, he says, listen, he says, I did a big sin, I killed all the rabbis. So tells him, how do I atone for such a sin like this? What can I do to atone? He felt guilty. Felt guilty about it. So what happened was that Shimon ben Shetach told him, he said, there's one way you can do it maybe, to get some atonement. So he tells him like this, rebuild the Bet HaMikdash, he tells him, because it's in bad shape right now. Dilapidated, needs needs a renovation, needs a refresh, right? So rebuild it, and that'll give you some atonement for your sin. So he did it, He rebuilt the whole Bet HaMikdash from scratch. And he built like a gorgeous edifice.
Does it explain why he killed all these people?
He was, these characters like Stalin, he was a Stalin. What does that mean? They kill, why they kill people? Because they're paranoid, maybe this one is against me, maybe this one will rebel against me, it's like a paranoid kind of a thing. You always feel insecure, like somebody's gonna get you, watching behind your back, watching behind your shoulders, people like this. These are the kind of people who kill everybody, because they don't trust you. They think that they think you're his enemy. He doesn't trust you. He's always suspicious. Ichrian, this kind of person, paranoid, schizo, kind of person like this, right? So that's what he was. He was a Stalin. You know, he was basically one of those character like that. So he kills off this, kills off that. So what does he do? He rebuilds the Bet HaMikdash. Can you imagine? From scratch. So they say, right, that this was like the most beautiful building that was ever made. They say if you never saw the Bet HaMikdash that Herod built, you never saw a beautiful building in your life. Can you imagine? He rebuilt the whole thing. We still have some, by the way, some pieces left over. You can see, by the way, there's some very interesting architecture, you know, like some very advanced stuff also, very advanced, like technologically. What do I mean by that? That you see, if you go to the walls over there and check out the walls, the way they're constructed, is like there's no cement between the stone. So like it's cementless, you know, like construction with no cement. How do you do that? In other words, how do you put stones one on top of the other, or bricks, right? And you don't put cement in between them. How do you build like that? Right? So they had like this kind of technology where it was like built on gravity, you know, like in other words, this supports this supports that. Like everything was built on gravity. So it's like everything is leaning on one or the other, and it's so stable like that it won't fall. You know, it's an amazing kind of technology. It's really something, you know, you can still see it today. You can go and see that stuff. No cement whatsoever. So, you know, like really very advanced technology there going on, the construction. So, okay, that's very interesting. So what happened was that, you know, as I told you in the beginning, they called him Herod the Great. So why they call him Herod the Great? What was great about him? He killed people. He was a butcher, you know? Well, what's so great about that? So they say the greatness was that he was a big builder. You know, he liked to build. So what he did was he went all over Eretz Israel and he built like everywhere. You know, he built edifices here. He liked to build. You know, he was a builder. So because of that, he built up a lot of the country. You know, that's why they call him great, because you know he built. You know, when you build, it's something. It's substantial. You know, you build the country up from the ground up. You know, it's considered to be something really substantial. Mm-hmm. So this was the guy that took over after the Hashmonaim died. Why do I tell you all this story? What does it have to do with Hanukkah, this whole story? Because the Hashmonaim, as we said, right, they were the ones that were leading, they were the ruling after Hanukkah, the whole Hanukkah miracle occurred. They're the ones who had the victory over the Greeks. They're the ones who repelled the Greeks, the Hashmonaim. So, why is that relevant? Because Hurdus came and killed them, as we said. Mm-hmm. So, if he killed them, the question is, what sin did they have, these Hashmonaim, that Hurdus should come and kill them? You know, there's always something that a person does, not for no reason. The person gets killed, or the kingdom gets wiped out. So, what was the sin of the Hashmonaim? So some want to say, you know, there are some commentators who try to say that their sin was like this, basically, that they took the kingdom even though they really shouldn't have. What does that mean? They shouldn't have? Because they were Kohanim. You know? Mm-hmm. So, let me ask you a question now. Does it say anywhere in the Torah that a Kohen cannot be a king? It's a good question. You know, the truth is that some people may think that there is something actually prohibition, because, you know, there are some commentaries who say that the reason why the Hashmonaim got killed off was because they took the Malchut, they took the kingdom, and they were Kohanim. So what's the sin? What sin did they do? If you look at the Shulchan Aruch, you look at Rambam, it doesn't say anywhere over there that it's forbidden for a Kohen to be a king. It doesn't say that anywhere. So then what was their sin? So actually there's a commentary, the Ramban, Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman, right, who was also a big Chacham, and he writes in his commentary on the Torah, on the Bible, he says that the reason why they got killed off could be because they took, as we said, they took the kingdom and they were Kohanim. But there's no prohibition for a Kohen to be a king. Yes, it's true, but nevertheless, it's not proper for them to be kings. Mm-hmm. Why is it not proper? What's the impropriety there? You know, so what he says is like this, Ramban. He says the reason why it's improper is because they're supposed to be serving Hashem in the Bet HaMikdash, you know, doing the sacrifices. In other words, when you have a job, you know, to serve God, you can't also, like, you know, be a jack of all trades. You know, like moonlighting, you know. This job is my morning shift. I have a night shift and I do something else. In the morning I do weddings. At night I'm in the morgue. I do funerals. Wait a second. You do weddings in the morning and then you do in the morgue. This also was a contradiction in terms. What does that mean? If you have the keter malchut, if you have the keter of the kehuna, right? It says in Pirkei Avot there's 3 crowns in Jewish people. What does that mean? 3 prominent positions. One is to be king, one is to be kohen, and the other one is to be a chacham. So chacham, okay, we know. We're not going to talk about that tonight. But what about kohen and king, right? So the thing is that when you have one, right, you're too busy with this. So taking the other also, is like really like redundant somewhat, or contradiction also. In order to make you understand a little bit deeper what the contradiction is, right? Why is it not proper that a kohen should be a king, or a king should be a kohen also? It's not really proper. And by the way, there's also a law like that. What does that mean? That the kings who come from the Malchut Bet David, from the kingdom of David, they're not allowed to be kohanim. Because they're not kohanim. I mean, they're not from Aharon. They're from David. So it's a wrong lineage. But it's not. It's also beyond the lineage. There's also something a little bit deeper there. You know what it is? The depth of it is like this: that it says in Zohar Kadosh that the quality of the kohen is something very special. In other words, why is he considered to be so exalted in the Jewish people, so special? He's the one who blesses the people. Birkat Kohanim, they bless us, and we're blessed because of them. Like Madrian David, Magati. Like we get a lot of merit from them, from the Kohanim. They teach us Torah, they teach us halacha, all kinds of things like this. They educate us. We get all these things from the Kohanim. They're exalted. So yeah, but any Jew can do that, right? To teach halacha, to teach Torah, to be a chacham, any Jew can do that. So why Kohen so much exalted or more than anybody else? What's the reason why? So the reason is, it says the Zohar Kadosh, the Kohanim have something very special. You know what it is? That their midah is chesed. Their quality is kindness. You know what I mean? And the quality of the king, what is his quality? It's not really kindness so much. So then what is it? The quality of the judgment, din. What does that mean? The main job of the king is basically to enforce the laws of the Torah. Not like today, the main job of the king, you know what it is, right? Take taxes, take money. That's what they care about, right? How much revenues are we getting from the people, Let's raise the taxes. Coming in now, this one, right? Trying to do all kinds of nonsense, right? You should never get in. He should be out all his life, as Hashem, out to lunch all his life. Never get into nothing. But the point is, right, that these people, and also the bad people in general, what are they interested in? No, not what I could give you as a citizen. The question is what I can take from you. You know what I mean? I'm selfish. I want to take from you everything. So a person like that who's selfish, all he thinks about is himself, So that's not a real king. That's just right, money grubber, like this guy, Hunter, his friends. These guys, right? They're not in it for the good of the people. They're in it for their own good. To get a nice salary for themselves, nice benefits for themselves. That's what it's all about. As one post, said, right? I saw one post on the internet, and they were right. Look at the difference between Trump, and this guy, right? Trump, what does he do? He has money, he has power, he has fame, he has wealth, everything. So what does he come into the presidency for? Not for that. He's coming in just to help people, to help the Americans, to help America. He already has everything else. This guy, what is he coming for? Biden, what is he coming for? He doesn't have nothing, so he wants to take everything. That's the whole point, right? Take money, take benefits, everything. That's why Trump was working for free. He wasn't even taking a salary. You know what I mean? He's working for free. Doesn't take a penny. He doesn't need it. This guy, he's coming in to take more money. Salary's not enough. Get over here from China, from here, from Ukraine, all kinds of places. That's what it's all about, corruption. You know what I mean? So, okay, we understand. It's a bad, the worst leader, the worst president, the worst king is the one who's looking to see what he can take from you. That's not a leader. A leader is supposed to be thinking about what he can do for you. But anyway, right, the point is, the king, the main job of the king is what? The main job is to enforce the laws of the Torah. The Jewish king. What does that mean? He has to make sure that the criminals are punished. Everybody who has to be judged is going to be judged. He has to set up a system of judgment, of justice. That's the king's job, to enforce the laws. He's like basically the main officer, the main cop. He's the top cop of the country, Chief commander, commander-in-chief. That's what he really is. He has to fight the wars, he's got to take care of the welfare of the people, and, this is what it's all about. So, what do we see over there? That the king, his whole nature, prerogative of the king, is judgment. To judge the people, to put the criminals in jail, to lock them up, to kill who he has to kill, execution, whatever it is, right? Okay, fine. The Kohen is just the opposite of that. The Kohen is all kindness. What does that mean? The Kohen is telling you, listen, I'm giving you blessing, I'm blessing you, I don't know if you deserve it, if you don't deserve it, I don't know, I'm not sure, I didn't check you. I didn't check your tzitzit, I didn't check your shoe size, I didn't check nothing. I just go up there on the stage, I bless you every day, go home and do what you have to do, This is kindness. You know what I mean? Everything that the Kohen does is kindness. He brings sacrifices, he brings the incense, we talked about the incense last week. All this the Kohanim do, all these things. But what they benefit us, to give us kapara, to give us atonement, to give us forgiveness, to give us life. So the Kohen is kindness, and the king is judgment. So now you see, right, that one doesn't mix with the other. These two crowns, one is the Kohen's crown, the kahuna, the other one is the crown of the king. They don't mix with the one and the other. This one is judgment, this one is kindness. So now you understand, right, that this is the reason why a Kohen is not really proper for him to be a king. Because that's not his nature, His nature is kindness. He doesn't want to, by nature, he doesn't want to punish the sinners so much. He wants to get them off the hook, benefit them, bless them, I'll give you a blessing. You know what I mean? That's not what it's for, the kingdom. So the nature of the Kohen is different than the nature of the king. That's the idea, And by the way, there's something interesting about that. You know what it says, right? That the Zohar Kadosh, it goes also deeper into that a little bit. It says that the Malchut Bet David, the kings of David, the truth is, right, that their nature was din, was justice, Malchut. That's where they come from. But the truth is that David had this interesting quality that he started out on the left side, which is judgment. The right is kindness. That's the way it is, right? Leftist, right winger, same thing, the leftists are the judgment. That's the way it is, right? And the right is kindness. You see, the same concept goes on there. So the point is like this, right? That the kings of Malchut Bet David, they started out with, says the Zohar Kadosh, they started out with judgment, but they held on to kindness. What does that mean? They have also an element that takes the justice and turns it into some kind of a kindness. I'll give you an example. How does that work? What's the mechanism you can do that? How can you turn justice into kindness? How do you do that? It seems to be a contradiction in terms. So they say, right, that, and as an example, David, when he used to judge people, they would come. He also had his own bet din, he had his own court. He was a chacham, He was a judge, he was Dayan. So they would come before him, like two litigants, like one is suing the other. He embezzled me, he extorted me, all kinds of stuff. He stole from me, he cheated me in business, blah, 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 all kinds of things, right? So David would decide according to hearing the both sides, according to halakha, who's right and who's wrong. And he would judge them. He would say, okay, this one is guilty, right? And you're innocent. So now you got to pay him $10,000. So what would he do? He would first judge them like that, which is the judgment element of the king. But then he would say like this, oh, okay, you can't pay, like, you don't have $10,000 to pay. Okay, I'll pay it for you, So he would pay out of his own pocket, to pay. You know what I mean? So that's like justice coupled with kindness, First you judge, you find out who's right and who's wrong, because that has to be done. Why is that, by the way? What's the reason why justice has to be done? You can't just cover it up under the rug, under the table. You can't do that. Because God wants justice in this world. His nature, that he created the world was justice. Everything has to be just, justice has to be served in every case, in every way. Eventually, you get yours, he'll get his, I'll get mine, everybody will get. Nobody gets off scot-free. But nevertheless, even though God wants justice, but he also wants that coupled with kindness a little bit, like mix it in with a little kindness, give him a little parole, get him off a little bit easy, Okay, you gave him 12 years, cut it down to 6, let him go. Say it's because of COVID, because of COVID, let him go, whatever, and let him out, right? This kind of thing. So that was Malchut Bet David. But the truth is, that not everybody was like Malchut Bet David. The other kings who were from the other tribes were not like that. They were arrogant, conceited, haughty, criminal. They were very, strong-arm tactics, bulldozers, They were very strong people, very, very powerful and very scary, these kings. So they say the difference between Malchut Bet David was, Malchut Bet David, they were humble people, They did justice, but it was also coupled with some humility, with kindness. But the other kings were not like that. So now the whole thing is like this, right? Now you begin to understand. What's the problem over here? Because the Kohanim, they're all chesed, they're all kindness, They're like, they're flimsy, What I'm saying flimsy, what I mean to say is flimsy is that they can't harm a fly, They're very, What was Aharon HaKohen? You look at this history of Aharon, that he was always making peace between the people, between husband and wife, between one neighbor and the other, trying to, get them to be friends, make kiss and make up, he would do all kinds of things like that. He was a kind of a man, that always takes that, that kind side. This is the quality of the Kohanim. They're kind people, and a person who's that kind cannot be a king. So because of that, this is the reason why the Hashmonaim, it wasn't really proper for them to take a malchut, especially such a long time like that. What does that mean? Okay, they did save the Jewish people. They saved them from the Greeks, from the oppression of the Greeks. So they deserve to have a malchut, let's say temporary malchut, for a certain amount of time until we can get back to to Yehuda, Malchut Bet David, because they're really the proper kings of the Jewish people. The kingdom belongs to them. So take the kingdom for a while until you can find somebody from David and bring him back. They say one of the things, by the way, the Kohen Gadol, he prays, the high priest, when he goes into the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur to pray over there, what does he say? That you should keep the Malchut kingdom in the house of Bet David, of Yehuda. The kings should come from there. So we want the kings to come from Yehuda, from David, because they're the kind ones, they're the humble ones. Mm-hmm. But the other ones are not so good like that. But nevertheless, the Kohanim, it's not proper for them to be kings because they're too soft. When you're Mr. Softy, right, you cannot be such a king like that. The king has to be very, very rough, very, very strong, very rigid, like hard as a rock, iron, he has to be iron fist. You want to couple that with also a pat on the back, that's also good, If you want to ben Chaz David, fine, but you got to do that judgment, But when you don't do that, it's not really the proper kingdom at all. This is the reason why Hashmonaim were not really able to do the job, and that's why they say they got punished. What does that mean? That their malchut was removed. Came the slave, Hurdus, Herod, and killed off a whole family of the Hashmonaim. So it says the Gemara, if you see somebody today, nowadays, that claims that he's from the Hashmonaim, the descendant of that kingdom, don't believe him. Why that? Because nobody got left over. There was only one person who was left over who was a slave. All of them got killed off besides one slave. So therefore, right, there was nobody else left over. So they say if somebody claims like that, you should know he's a slave because there's nobody else who got left over from the kingdom of Hashmonaim. So this is the reason why one cannot mix with the other. This is one of the issues that we want to deal with, right, for Hanukkah. So therefore, the Rambam tells us like this, right? What's the rule about this, by the way? How does it work? The rule with kings. The rule is that the king can come from any tribe. Any tribe can be a king, whether it's Levi or Issachar or Zevulun or Binyamin or Ephraim or Menashe. Anybody can be a king. So what's the difference between the kings of the other kings and the kings of Bet David? It says the Rambam, and also in other sources you find the same thing written, that the difference is that the kingdom of David is everlasting, lasts forever. The kingdom of the other kings is only going to be temporary, right? 50 years, 100 years, 200 years, whatever it is, right? Eventually it'll be destroyed. Why is that? Because Kadosh Baruch Hu, in the end, he wants Malchut Bet David to take over everything. What does that mean? The Mashiach comes from Bet David. You know what I mean? That's the idea. He doesn't want anybody else to touch that Malchut. That's the idea. So this is the reason why the Rambam says, right, they cannot have a lasting Malchut, even if they're going to be righteous, by the way. Even if they're going to be good kings, nevertheless, they cannot stay forever. That's the idea, you know? So this is the reason why it says when Mashiach comes, Mashiach ben Yosef, Mashiach ben David, two Mashiachs. So Mashiach ben Yosef will be from Yosef, not from David. So his kingdom is going to be temporary. What does that mean? He's just going to prepare the groundwork for the Malchut ben David. Once he prepares the groundwork, he's off the hook, right? Get off the hook. Let David come and take his kingdom. Let him come and take his throne. There's also other things which are said about kings, right? Besides that a person has to be careful about them. So now let me ask you a question. Herod, who, as we said, right, took the kingdom from the Hashmonaim, was he a legitimate king, Herod? As we said, right, that what happened was that he was not, because he was a slave. So he, according to Halakha, he wasn't allowed to be a king. You know, a slave cannot be a king. So then, what does it have to be a king? It has to be somebody his lineage come from Jewish lineage. If he doesn't have a Jewish lineage, he cannot be a king. So what does that mean? Can a convert be a king? And the answer is no. They cannot be a king, right? In fact, a convert can't hold any position like that, you know, of any authority. They're not allowed to hold anything like that. It has to be, so therefore a king has to be somebody who comes from Jewish parents. This is one of the, so therefore Hurdus, Herod, was not a kosher king. You know? But what happened was that once Herod got the kingdom, he married a Jewish wife, you know, even though he wasn't really allowed to do that. But you know, he was king, he was a strong arm, you know, he was a Stalin. He can do whatever he wants, right? Nobody can stop him. You know, a dictator, you know, whatever. So once you're a dictator, what happened was he married a Jewish woman. So he had children, and those children also became kings for several generations. So the question is, were they allowed to be kings? No, that's the question, right? Were they allowed? So the truth is, from their mother's side, they were Jewish. These kings. From the father's side, they're from Herod, who was a slave. So therefore, the truth is that they were not the ideal for the kingdom, because really, a person who's ideal for the kingdom should be from both sides should be Jewish, from the mother's side, from the father's side as well. Why is that? Because if he doesn't have a lineage from his father's side, Jewish lineage, he doesn't come from one of the tribes. So it's like sort of like a blemish kind of thing, blemish there, you know. So it's not exactly the proper thing to have a king like that. Also, another thing, right, which is said about kings, which is very important. I'm sorry.
Nevertheless, Hashem let him rule.
Absolutely, because there are, you know, certain times where Kadosh Baruch Hu allows things to happen, which are not according to halakha, and there are reasons for everything, you know. There's a reason for everything in this world. Sometimes things happen against the halakha. The world is not perfect, you know. Olam Hazeh is not a perfect place, so there is room for corruption, like the Zohar Kadosh says, you know, regarding what you're saying. You know, the Zohar Kadosh says, right, that the proper place for the reward to reward the wicked for their good deeds that they did is in this world. You know why? Because in the next world they're not going to be there. Number one, they have no business over there. But here, where it's a world of evil, a world which is not really straight, olam hafuch, raiti, everything is upside down. So therefore, since not everything is done according to the rules over here, the rules are broken. So since the rules are broken, that means that you can also have evil people, wicked people who succeed and, you know, prosper, make a lot of money, and look like they're good, look like they're good citizens, even though they're really not. This is exactly why one of the rabbis in Talmud, you know what happened, right? That he went to, this was Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, I think, yeah, if I'm not mistaken. He went to Olam Haba. How do you do it? They say, right, that one time the Satan came to speak to this rabbi. Satan came to speak to him, you know. So, like Satan likes to hang around with some rabbi sometimes, he likes to do that. So he comes to speak with this rabbi, and so Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi tells him like this. He tricked him, he tricked Satan. Can you imagine? He pulled a trick on Satan. Who can trick this to Satan? So he told Satan, he says, you know what? He says, I see you got your sword with you, huh? The sword, you kill people with? So he says, can I see that for a second, your sword? Can I see it? Can you show it to me? Take it off and let me see it for a second. So Satan tells him, why do you want to see my sword? So he says, don't worry, I'll give it back to you. Don't worry. What? You're worried about me? I'll give it back to you. So what happened was he took it and he didn't give it back. Can you imagine? He snapped, he grabbed it from him. He nabbed it from him. He stole it from him. So what did he do? Once he took his knife, he took his sword, he went to Olam Haba to see what's going on over there. Now he had power to go there because Satan could not stop him anymore. So he went up there and he checked, so he returned. And the rabbis asked him, they said, when you went up to the Olam Haba, what did you see over there? Give us a report, video, some kind of, some kind of details. So what did he tell them? He tells them like this: Olam hapuch raiti. You know what that means? Olam hapuch raiti. That means I saw the world upside down. I saw the world. In other words, whatever it is here, over there was upside down. So what does that mean? What's the connection between upside down, this world, that world? So the connection is like this. What we just said now, that this world is olam hasheker. It's a world of lies and deception. It's not a straight world. So therefore, the people who succeed over here in this world are the wicked. The wicked succeed. The sinners, they succeed more than everybody else. So what happens is that because of that, it doesn't look like it's just. That doesn't look right. The people over here who succeed, who go up, become the chief of this, chief of that, chief rabbi, chief this, they're all not the best people, because in Olam Hazeh, there's room for the wicked also to succeed. Mainly for the wicked. Because it's a corrupted world. So what you saw over there was that all these people who are succeeding in this world, who are wicked, over there in Olam Haba, they're down, they're like lowlives, they're peasants. They have no success over there. Why is that? Because over there, the true nature of people is revealed. In Olam Haba is Olam Emet. It's the world of truth. So what does that mean? When you get to the world of the truth, over there, there's no lies anymore. Everything is straight. Over there, what you see is what you get. What does that mean? If you see somebody who's down, that means he deserves to be down. He's wicked, he's a sinner, and that's why he's down. And if you see somebody who's up, that means he's righteous. So just the opposite, right? Over here, the people who are down, over there, they were up. And the people who are here are up, over there, they're down. So which is the true world? Over there is the true world. Over there, you understand? Olam Haba. Over there, it's the right order. It's the right hierarchy over there goes on. But in this world, it's not the true hierarchy. So what does that mean? Over here in this world, what happens is that the people who rule, especially when we're in Galut, we're talking about when the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed. So then what happens is that once the Beit HaMikdash is destroyed, who rules over the world? The wicked, the sinners, the Erev Rav, all the lowlives, all the degenerates, all kinds of people like this, right? All kinds of deviant people, right? All kinds of sick people, heretical, sinners, deniers, heretics, people like this, they rule over the world. What's the reason why? Because this world is Olam HaSheker. What's the reason why HaKadosh Baruch Hu made it this way? Why did he make this world like this? Why did he make the world this way? The reason is because he wants to give the reward to the wicked over here. Because over there, they have no business, they're not going to be there. So he gets rid of them by giving the reward over here. And in this world, the only way you can get reward is by being not so perfect, being wicked. Why? Because that's not the only way, but that's the main way. The main way is that since this world is corrupted, also the people who are corrupted, they succeed in this world. This is the way the world functions, and that's exactly what Chazal said in the beginning of Bereshit. They also said something else which is similar to this. You know what it is? They said that what I want to tell you, that there was a certain light that Kadosh Baruch Hu made in the Maaseh Bereshit, in the beginning of the world. He made a certain light. So that light that he made was the light which you can see like everything, all the truth, all the history, all the future. You can see with prophecy, with the divine inspiration. You can see everything over there with that light. That light, Kadosh Baruch Hu, once he saw how powerful it is in this world, he hid it. That light was hidden. It's only going to come back out when Olam Haba starts, when Mashiach comes. Why is that? Because that light, Kadosh Baruch Hu doesn't want the wicked to benefit from that light. They don't deserve that. So the wicked, what happens is that they succeed in this world, and it's a dark world. The light doesn't come here, because if the light was here, they would use that light for the wrong purposes, for improper purposes. The wicked. So therefore, he hid that light. It's a organuz. It's a hidden light which is going to come out when the time comes. But the point is that this world and that world, it's just the opposite. Whoever is down over here is up over there. Whoever is up over there, over here, is down over there. Because this is a corrupted world, and over there it's a world of emet. It's a world of truth. That's the idea, And this is exactly why you have such deranged, people like this coming into the government, becoming kings, becoming presidents. Why is that? Since the world is corrupted, so also the corruption is also seeps into the malchut, into the kingdom. The kingdom is also corrupted because of that. And this is the reason why in this world, the best thing to do, what it is? Just to hide out until the wrath subsides. The wrath is over. Yeah. Not to get involved, to get into the high places, talk about high things, here in this world. Why? Because when you go high, you go into the world of the elites, right? The world of all these things over there in those places, the world of the elites, it's all corruption there. So a person in this world, what should he try to do? Be humble, be simple, just get through it, do your job to Torah mitzvot. Don't look for malchut, don't look for kingdom, don't look for status, don't look for too much success, too much stature, too much kavod, honor. Don't look for these things. Be simple, get through it, and that's all you need to do, right? So that's why it says in Pirkei Avot, then we'll finish off with this, that a person should not be looking for malchut. What does that mean? That a person, if it was a Talmid Chacham, was a Torah scholar, for him it's a disgrace, it's a step down to become a king, or to become a president. Because the table of the Chachamim, the world of the Chachamim is much superior than the world of the kings. That's what it says in Pirkei Avot. So the best thing that a person could do to himself is not to want to be a king, not to be a politician, congressman, senator, whatever, things like this, right? All kinds of positions like this. You shouldn't want to be one of these things. What's the reason why? Because once you get into that, it's all corruption, You get into the corrupted world. The leadership in this world is corrupted right now. So the only way to do it is to stay with Torah. And the Torah is higher than any president. It's higher than any malchut, than any king, than any position whatsoever. That's the idea, Our table is better than their table. So when you're a chacham, you try to be a king, you're stepping down, And now, right, that's exactly the point. So why were the Hashmonaim, the Maccabees, why were they punished? Because really for them, to take the malchut, to take the kingdom, since they were Kohanim, which was higher than the kingdom, because they're teaching Torah to the people, and they're bringing atonement to the people, and they're bringing sacrifices. This is more important than being a king, So therefore, what happens is that when you step down one plateau to another, and you went down the wrong way, instead of going up, you went down. So, okay, temporarily, if you do this, as an emergency measure, we can forgive you for that, no problem. But when you do it for 200 years, and you still don't want to step down, and you want to keep going to be a king when you're really a Kohen, which is even higher than being a king, so that's already bad. It's not a good thing. Spiritually, being a Kohen is much higher mission. It's much holier mission than being a king. So therefore, right, this is the reason why the Maccabees, the Hashmonaim, were punished. Even though in the beginning what they did was good, they defeated the Greeks, right? They banished them. They reinstated the Bet HaMikdash. They rededicated the Bet HaMikdash. They reinstated the service of the Bet HaMikdash. They restored the Judaism and the Torah. Everything they did, everything very good, very good. But 200 years, you didn't have to be king for that. It was just enough for them to repel the Greeks and then to step down eventually sometime. So if you want to know, right, why the Hashmonaim got punished, the Maccabees, even though they were righteous kings, they were good people, They were tzaddikim, these people. But nevertheless, what happens is that sometimes you start out with the right mission, but as things go along too long, it already becomes corrupted, becomes something else altogether. So this is the reason why. So even though according to halakha, there is no prohibition for a kohen to be a king, but as the Ramban says, it's not really the proper thing to do. Because you're really stepping down from your plateau, higher plateau, going to a lower plateau. You're going from serving God into being politician, Excuse me, but being a politician is not the same thing as serving God. Even though that's also serving God, if you do it the right way. But nevertheless, it's a different level altogether. Okay, Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen v'Amen. Thanks for coming. God bless you. Have a good holiday.
Amen.
Wealth, health, happiness, long life, longevity, good health. Stay away from the doctor and stay away from the hospital. And eat good, drink good, sleep good, and especially learn good. That's the most important. Learn Torah good. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Chazak u'Baruch.